Congressman Devin Nunes, California Republican, will resign to run Donald Trump's media company, which is like dropping out of med school to focus on your band.
California is reinstating an indoor mask mandate. Most Californians are happy about it, since they can now cancel this month's lip injections.
The 2022 Golden Globes won't air on TV. What's TV? Said everyone under 30.
Another giant asteroid will graze Earth this month. Okay, we really need to set up a meeting with the asteroid HR department to discuss personal boundaries.
And finally, due to a global shortage of chemical fertilizers, manure is in high demand. Farmers are so desperate, they've turned to the brown market.
But
Welcome. It is indeed Biden time. I am so proud to have been the one to bring you that joke. As always, I am Christian Bladt. And with us in her fancy new digs, the one and only Tamra Brown.
hello again.
It's great to see you again. Thanks for bringing the funny as always, and bringing a very sharp striped shirt. Our friend Scott Moore. Hello, sir.
Woo-hoo. Hi.
Now,
Great to be here.
this is our end of the year Biden time, and due to the holidays, and then just selfishly some of my own travel. Oh, we'll be gone for about a month, but you can look for us again in January.
Where are you going?
I will be in New York, and it's not like I couldn't do this from New York, but I don't want to be too locked in.
You don't
because,
have internet in New York, I heard.
Well, I'm going to be staying in Brooklyn, so I'm pretty sure that they don't. I mean, it's that hipster internet with the like Amish beard. So I don't know if it works the same way as internet in California. No, I got to keep my schedule free for all the shows that might want to have me on as a guest while I'm out there. I think that it's important to keep things free and clear.
That's
But we'll be back in the middle of January. Don't you worry, everybody. So as we look back on 2021. There are any number of important stories to talk about, but the perspective we were putting it into when we were talking just before we started is, I guess, a decent place to start. Kind of a big story really is just the erosion of democracy and people's faith in it. It's hard to believe that it's the same calendar year. But we are getting very close to January 6th, 2022. So it's still in the news as much as some people would prefer otherwise. And I think it's a really important place to start because there are obviously a number of people who would like for us to stop talking about it, would like for us to not pay attention. You obviously have Trump people who want to be able to move past it, but just Republicans in general that in no way endorse any of it. They're just like, yeah, that's not going to help our brand. Let's stop talking about it. So for someone that a lot of people don't consider a Republican anymore, but Liz Cheney was reading through some texts that former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. I'm sure that's a Freudian slip in some way, shape, or form. Do I mean Groucho? Do I mean Carl? Stay tuned, and we'll get to the bottom of it. But Mark Meadows had gotten a bunch of texts on January 6th from Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, a lot of people that were worried about the damage that Trump was letting happen to his legacy. I'm sure that that one of those texts was from Tamara, but think of his legacy, Mr. Meadows. But the one to start with is Don Jr., who apparently doesn't have his dad's cell phone number. So he has to text Mark Meadows and say, this shit has to stop now. And, for Don Jr. to only put shit in a text, and Liz Cheney was kind of adorable, where each time she's like, and I quote, this shit needs to stop now. You could tell she's like, oh, I don't want to talk like this, but I guess I have to. I mean, it's interesting, because it's like, even, when Sean Hannity's texting you that like this needs to stop, I think that maybe it needed to stop. But as these hearings have gone on, and they're seemingly really one sided, these hearings, but we do continue to get some good information in terms of useful information. I don't know if it's good for the sake of democracy, but Scott, I wanted to let you sort of weigh in on all of this, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about this.
Oh God, it's like, how do we even unpack all this? Because there's
I
just so much
Yeah.
there. Like,
That's why I started with the texts, because it's easy to kind of work out from there.
yeah, I mean, look, on one hand, you can see this is very damning. But on the other hand, I just go back to the whole thing again about, is this really going to move the needle at all with people that support Donald Trump and think that all this was orchestrated by Antifa and when you have that propaganda machine, I don't know if it's going to move the needle at all. You could see all this and you could see how terrible it is. And then it still doesn't change the damn thing. So that's kind of this, again, kind of the scary thing we're at now with not even the erosion of democracy. It's kind of like the erosion of truth and facts. And we've talked about this in the past, like that there used to be a through line of like what all of us believed were essential basic facts that we could all agree on. And then we might have differences on those facts and how we'd want to move forward. But now it's like you have one side that lives in a complete fantasy, and has continued to be drilled every day with this fantasy. And you can see now how propaganda works when you constantly do it. Like when you've heard about that in Nazi Germany, where you do such a preposterous lie that everyone knows is not really, could never be true, but you keep talking about it all the time to the point where it's like, well, maybe that is true, because why else would you be saying something so preposterous? And it's kind of the same thing here. It's like everyone that has a brain realizes that Trump lost the election, and it was not, I mean, it was closer in my opinion than it should have been, but he lost the election, and that's all there is said to it. Now you go back, you regroup, you figure out why you lost, and you figure out how you're going to fix it for the next time around, and that's how democracy works. And in this case, because he can't stand the fact that he lost with his ego, he has to keep going on about this lie and bring everyone down to it, to the point that a majority of Republicans supposedly believe in this. So you have not only just the damning things of January 6th. I mean, again, and we kind of knew this on January 6th. We're like, where is Donald Trump for that 3-hour window where he wasn't saying anything or doing anything? And then he kind of had that weird, like he was a hostage speech at the end of the day, telling the supporters to go home. But then on the flip side, still calling it a fraudulent election and keeping those folks whipped up, because now he's not, saying, hey, this election was fair and square. We tried our best. We'll come back. I love you guys. Whatever it is that he had to say in his Trumpian way. But the fact that then he doubled down at the end of the day and still went on about it is so damning and so damaging. But again, where are we going to be at? Is anyone going to care? And is he going to come back and run again in 3 years? I mean, he has so many legal issues that are going to come out between now and then anyways, that we talk about this, he'll never be president again. But the fact is, he's already setting the stage to, if it's not him, for another person in a close presidential election year to be able to overturn the results a lot easier this time around than in 2020. And that's the second part of this that's very scary. Besides the January 6th, which we talked about too, the fact that Republicans didn't get on board to do the commission to wrap it up at the end of the year means that all this stuff is going to continue well into next year before the midterms. And it's all going to be really bad for not only Trump, but for those immediate folks in Congress like Jim Jordan, like Kevin McCarthy, who has dreams of becoming the next speaker. It's going to be very bad for quite a few of the current Congress people in office right now, as this continues to trickle out into the new year. And again, Republicans did not want to be a part of this. And because of that, it would have been over at the end of the year, but it's not going to be now. So there's just a lot of stuff to unpack with between the January 6th stuff, but as well as just the individual states that are now, doubling down as well onto restricting voting and taking power out of where power used to be to certify elections and put it into partisan hands now, which can be very dangerous in the long term for the health of our democracy if these states do go ahead and do some of these things.
Tamara, I want to ask you basically the sort of same broad question about January 6th, but there was one thing that Scott, you mentioned that got me to thinking. If Republicans win the majority in the House, which seems very likely next year, I know a lot can happen. Do you think that Kevin McCarthy, because of sort of his branding as a pro-Trump guy, do you think he would have trouble actually getting the votes to be speaker, and that Republicans, your dyed in the wool Republicans, would actually want somebody else? Or do you think he's got enough of the crazies where he is the person who's sort of inevitable that he'll be the speaker if Republicans win?
Is that for me or Tamara?
For Scott?
That's for Scott Fur. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just because you brought it up. Yeah.
Again, nothing would surprise me anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's some things where they float around that they would vote for Donald Trump for speaker. And you don't have to be a present member of Congress to be speaker. You could have anybody. But yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think it's going to be more difficult for Kevin McCarthy than he realizes. Not only if the Republicans do win and he has been loyal enough to Trump, then yes, I think he can eke it out. But I don't think it's going to be as easy for him, a cakewalk that'll be able to walk right in and become speaker as he might think it is, or people from the outside think it is, because there's, again, a lot of turmoil and things that are going to happen within the next year that could make it very difficult for him to just walk right in and become speaker, which I know is his overall goal. But if it was now, I would say yes, he probably has a pretty good shot, because he's trying to thread that needle between, which he's not doing a great job anymore. He was at the beginning, earlier in the year, but now threading that needle between the more extreme base and the Trumpian side, and trying to still gather some of the moderate and keep everybody kind of together. But yeah,
I think that his move was to install a penalty box for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert for like 2 minutes at a time, and then they're like, all right, they're back in. So Tamara, sort of backtracking to one of the big stories of the entire year being January 6th, which right there at the beginning of the year, so we've had most of the year to sit with it. I'm just interested in sort of your thoughts, as the time has gone on. I think we've found out more. I think for me, it was so horrific on the day that I don't know that I can say like, oh, it feels worse now, but we just know so much more about it. So are you surprised that we're still talking about January 6th in the way where so many people are really trying to move on from it?
Well, I am surprised that these text messages exist, because of the fact that I did not think, for so long the Republican narrative was that this isn't a big deal. It was blown out of proportion by Democrats. It was just another rally, just like all of the rallies that they had. It's just not a big deal. And to see that Don Jr. and Sean Hannity, such extreme right-wing conservatives, acknowledged on the day that this is not okay and this is a huge problem, that to me is surprising. I would have thought that they, honestly, on the day that it was happening, was just like, shit happens. So yeah, the fact that they did send those texts is surprising to me. I'm sure that Don Jr. was texting his dad, but just nobody was able to, he was reveling so much in the idolatry of that day that nobody was able to say like, you have to, nobody was able to get him to do what everybody knew he needed to do. Nobody was able to make that happen. So yeah, it needs to stay on a certain level. It needs to stay, because it was such a tremendous just dark spot on our democracy. It does need to stay in the collective conscious, I think, until people and people need to be held accountable. So yeah, that's what surprises me about what we're learning. And I hope that more. I don't know what other information we would like to come out about this. I mean, what's Mark Meadows? If they actually do get him to make a statement, it's not like I don't see him just like coming clean with some behind the scenes information of how that day unfolded. I don't see that happening. So this is probably the most information we're going to get, is what I would imagine. But yeah, it's probably going to just drift back into the ether, just because I don't know what how much more details would come out at this point.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know that you would ever be able to see actual text to, especially from then President Trump. And you're probably right. Don Jr. probably did try to reach him and couldn't get any sense. It's Eric who probably doesn't have his cell phone number. I think that seems much more likely. I feel like, Don has it, but his father has sort of, there's that setting where you can make it so that the alert doesn't pop up when someone texts you, so that like when you have time to go through all your texts, then you'll look. So he probably put Don Jr. on silent, and that probably had something to do with it. But yeah, you sort of referenced earlier that this idea that this really was those 3 hours. This was like people just this is like some twisted version of like those military parades in Red Square that we would see in the old Soviet Union. This is like, great, this is my version of that. And yeah, the narrative from, and it's not all, and it's probably not even most, but there's like a corner of conservatives who still characterize that day, what a bunch of people went for a walk. Those are the exact words that I've seen written out, and so I'm assuming that's the intonation that goes with it. And I think the most surprising one, and let me know what you think, Scott, is that Mike Pence seems to be able to turn the page on that day. So he's a lot more tried and true of a politician than I think I ever realized. That he's able to be like, yeah, that day wasn't so bad. Come on, people were upset. It was like, yeah, remember how they wanted to hang you and your family? They imagined that you were the Russian czar and his family, because I like to make multiple Russian comparisons in the space of 2 minutes. But just the fact that it's like, remember how everybody wanted to kill you? Ah, come on,
Sometimes
Q,
people want to kill you.
Q will be Q. Come on, let's go have a non-alcoholic beer. Mother, may I have an O'Doul's? But I don't know. I mean, I think that he's probably maybe not the most, but it's surprising that how quickly he was able to try to start downplaying it, because in his head he thinks people would vote for him for president in 2024, right, Scott?
Well, and here's the thing that I think is going to be really challenging for him, because you're right. He's got to play. I mean, we've talked about this. I feel like if you were going to cast someone to play a politician, it would be Mike Pence. Just the middle-aged, white hair, just Midwest. I mean, everything about him just checks off all the boxes. Yeah, for the middle-aged straight white guy. Just perfect politician there if you're going to pick it out. But I think the big challenge for him, and there was a whole thing about that Trump was saying too, is that he's essentially damaged goods. And I in this case, I actually do believe with Trump, because of all of the stuff about how it's going to be drilled into these Trumpian and the extreme far right base, that Mike Pence didn't do anything to save the presidency for Trump, that it's going to be very difficult for Mike Pence to separate himself from that, no matter how many times he now tries to downplay it after the fact. That's going to be part of his legacy too, which I agree with is a good legacy and will look good for him in history down the road. But to run for president with Trump being such a force in this party is going to be very difficult for Mike Pence, unfortunately, to get any traction. So I could say Trump will never be president, and I will say more than likely I will also say Pence will never be president either. But the other thing that kind of perked my ears a bit with this January 6th commission is the fact that I'm wondering how extreme they'll go into going after Trump. Like, will they actually try to even attempt to do any kind of criminal charges against Trump for that day, for his dereliction of duty, essentially, because that's part of the thing what I thought was so damning with Meadows, with the text and everything, were the fact again that you had a 3 hour window of time where this man was so enraptured in his own, excuse me, his own ego, and watching these people on his behalf go berserk, and he didn't do anything to calm them down and to kind of end this. um, Makes me wonder how far will the commission go into suggesting there could be potential criminal charges. It would just be such a mind-boggling thing to have a former president even in that kind of realm of charges, but let alone you still have what Donald Trump did in Georgia, which is going to play out as well, with that phone call with Brad Raffensperger. You have, like I said, you just have a lot of things that are going to come out in the next year or so that are going to just be very damaging. But at the end of the day, how much is that going to move the needle? And that just goes back to what I said at the top of the show. How much is that going to move the needle for the right-wing propaganda and for these people that are sort of brainwashed in this Trumpian world, that no matter what, anything that happens or comes out, it's the other side because they hate him, they hate how amazing he is, and they're just trying to bring him down. And it is a scary place to be, because you can have all the evidence out there and there will be a good quarter of the population that will still continue to support this man and anything he says, no matter what, because that's where we're at now. But I'm going to be fascinated to see what comes out of this and if there's going to be any other things that come out of it.
Yeah, and Tamara, I think that obviously the damage of the big lie is the percentage of people that think that the election itself was really stolen, but you also have sort of the aftershocks of that is this idea that even people who think that Trump legitimately lost the election and that the margin was enough, just conversationally, people say, well, we know that the tabulations in some of those states were a little iffy, or just calling into question, and sort of like said matter of fact by rational people who aren't saying that it was stolen, but they're like, yeah, they came close, yeah, they had to, they stole it a little bit. And just sort of that idea, I think, is goes back to this idea of eroding our faith in democracy. And I mean, I don't know, I mean, do you feel like conversationally, or, and it doesn't have to be in person conversation, what you read online, just any sort of interactions, are you seeing that people do tend to feel like, oh yeah, our elections are actually not as clean as they should be?
Well, I mean, the ultimate damage is that, for states that already have such restrictive voting rights, that's the people that are believing that there was such, the believe in the big lie and believe that corruption took place. They're the ones that are, trying to uphold the limiting people's voting rights, and trying to enforce ridiculous requirements to allow people to vote. So I think that's the damage. uh, in addition to just that many people believe that they can't believe in our um, the legitimacy of our election process. That would be really scary if I felt that way. I would, if I felt that our election was really rigged and my vote, it didn't count, it didn't really matter. I don't know. I would be really, really up. I feel like if it were the reverse, I feel like if Democrats um, believed that the voting process was rigged, I think that there would be a lot more action, um, and a lot more. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like the movement to change things would be just a lot bigger and a lot more immediate, because it seems like, and maybe it's just because I kind of I live in more of a democratic bubble, but it seems to me that even though um, so many people may believe that the election was rigged. In my opinion, if that's really what you believe, not enough is being done to fix that. If that's really what you believe, even though I just said, it is a detriment to our already restrictive voting rights. But yeah, I think that it's just. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I do feel that there's a certain level of. I do feel that there is a certain level of that they believe that it's rigged, but they know that it wasn't, because I just think
Yeah,
that,
that it's rigged, but it's rigged, but not rigged enough.
but not,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, yeah, let's make
I
sure.
guess
Yeah,
that's what you were saying,
yeah.
Christian.
No, I know, and I think that I think that that's basically what I'm saying, and I feel like that's going to be that's going to linger. I mean, maybe less so in the terms, but I think when people go to vote for president again, it's going to be in a lot of people's minds that there is this narrative. Even people that like never saw anything that had convinced them that the election was stolen. They're like, yeah, but there's a lot of people out there. There's like I can only imagine what what poll workers in Arizona will have to go through in 2024, because of just how much focus there have been on those, how many times ballots have been counted or inappropriately counted. Obviously, the pandemic rages on, despite what some corners of the country and the world might think. I was reading just before we came on that in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is recommending that restaurants be closed, and anyone who ever tried to eat in England should probably just say thank you. So I hope it has nothing to do with COVID, and you're doing people a great service in closing restaurants over there. We got some updates here in California. There's a mask mandate, which those of us that live in a county like Los Angeles are like, what do you mean you're starting a mask mandate? We already had that.
Yeah.
But I had been talking to a friend the last week who he lives in the bright red suburb of Anaheim Hills, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, we don't wear masks anywhere here," So I guess it's really for those
So
places.
interesting how someplace so close, I can't
Yeah,
even imagine being in a grocery store with people not wearing masks.
yeah. I was the day after Thanksgiving because we stayed at my in-laws. They live in Orange County, and it wasn't that there were nobody there. People who worked there had them on, but there were probably more than half of the people shopping weren't wearing them because they didn't have to. So yeah, and it's just like, all right, that's what the rules are there. What am I gonna do? But it took some getting used to. But I guess the next, if I go after Christmas, then everybody will have to have masks on. And I don't know. I know that this fight has been the biggest fight of the last year, is this idea of wearing masks. And maybe it's because, I don't know. Let me ask you first, Tamara, and then I'll ask you, Scott, the same thing. Do I think it's not a big deal because I live somewhere where we've except for what, those 2 weeks in like June, apart from those 2 weeks, we've always had to wear them since March of 2020. So, Tamara, do you think you were talking sort of about being in a little bit of a left leaning, a blue bubble? We're definitely in a blue bubble in Los Angeles County. So, is that why when I see people in other states talking like, "Oh, I can't believe you have to wear masks there," I'm like, actually, it's not that big a deal, It's just because we didn't really get to taste the freedom. I don't even think I did it once those 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's hard for me to say because from the beginning, I've never understood what the big deal is about a mask. Like I've always since I've started wearing one, which was a hugely when I first started wearing a mask, like I had never done that before. There are people who sometimes like when they were sick, they'd go to work and maybe put on a mask or something like that. I never wore a face mask until March of 2020. But once I did, it just I'd forget that I had it on, and the fact that people still make such a big deal about it. Even people who know that it's important. I mean, there are people who are like, I hate wearing this thing, but I know that I have to. Like, I just don't understand like how some people are just so uncomfortable in this thing. I don't know. It goes down to the individual in that respect. But yeah, I think that we're so used to it in Los Angeles County that were things to drastically change and suddenly we did not wear masks anywhere, I think a lot of us would feel that would feel weird to me. Like, I feel like if I were in a public place without a mask at this point, indoors, I do wear one. Like if I'm at an outdoor farmer's market, anything that's outdoors, I'll usually have it down like under my chin. But
Yeah, I just to interject. A lot of times I go with what's the setting I'm in. If I'm like a farmer's market's a good example. If it seems like everybody's got them on, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna bow down to the peer pressure. The most interesting thing has been children's birthday parties. Because some parents, you feel like they left, because the children's birthday parties that I've been to for the most part have been outside. And some of the parents, they don't even bring their masks out of the car. There's other parents who wear them except for when they and their kids are eating. So it's always like, okay, I've got mine. Is this somebody that I feel is going to be uncomfortable if I don't have it on while I talk to them? And I think it's a lot of little levels of that. But also, Scott, here now we've had it for a while where I humble brag, I went to a screening of the new Spider-Man movie yesterday, and to go in, I had to show proof of vaccination, and I've had to do that a few times now. So to me, it's not a big deal. But I know people that have chosen not to go to events because even though they are vaccinated, just it's the fact that they have these policies. They don't want to support events and restaurants and places that do that. But it must just be because I'm here that I've gotten used to it, right, Scott? Like, you travel around. So I mean, in North Carolina, you don't have to show a Vax card to get into a restaurant, do you?
No, but it's kind of more like California in the sense where you do have to wear masks inside, versus other places like Florida where you don't have to do anything. So there are definitely differences. I will only be the person to have a slightly different feeling about the mask thing, and only because, and I understand the new variant is out, and I also can see that it seems like a lot of vaccinated folks are still getting it, but it's very minor, and even boosted people, which I got boosted a couple weeks ago, so I'm fully re-up now. But
until the next one,
exactly. For me,
and just while you're talking, I'll put up this helpful map that's covered up by an ad. But these are some of the latest. Of course, the ad comes up right when I show it. But anyway, yeah. So here's if I was more professional, I could do a better job showing you this map. But anyway, yeah, just
it's like blue and red states there. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
Look at how
You look at the states. Yeah, the states that are blue. Good old blue Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, there's definitely more.
For me, it's just a bit of, and that's just me being whiny, but I don't like always wearing a mask. And I get it, you're in close proximity to people, but I don't always like wearing a mask when I'm working out, especially with cardio, because it always tends to fall off the nose.
That is the one place that I find it to most that I only find comfortable at the gym. So I just stopped going to the gym. Problem solved.
So that for me is the only thing. And then I also kind of find it a bit silly in the sense, like, I could see, again, if you're at your station with the gym, that you could pull off your mask, is kind of the same thing of eating and drinking, where it's kind of that thing where it's like, I get if you're moving around and you're walking by people, put on the mask. But it's the same thing when you're at a restaurant or a bar, or even at the movie theater. I mean, I look around in a darkened movie theater and like nobody's wearing their mask because they're having popcorn, but they're not eating it the whole time. So I get on paper they're trying to do things, but when you're in an environment like a movie theater or a restaurant or a bar, the likelihood is you're not have your mask on. And I was at a holiday party this weekend, and again, it's very interesting to me because in a lot of ways I feel like even out here in California we're kind of beyond I don't want to say to the point of Florida where COVID doesn't exist, because people are a little bit better still about wearing masks. But when you go into establishments now, not only are they completely jam-packed. I mean, I was at the Grove the other week, completely packed out. I went to a movie screening where the actors were there at the front, completely packed out at the Chinese theater. And then this past weekend, I was at a holiday party in West Hollywood, completely packed out. And then we're upstairs. And because you did have to show proof of vaccination, everyone's taking off the mask the minute they get upstairs to this private event, and they're just passing along appetizers where people are just taking it off the plate. And I mean, it's just such a, when you think about like COVID, you're like, oh my God, people are sharing, like, just taking food
look,
off of
I think I can understand people being comfortable, but when it got to the point where they were chewing up food like baby birds and feeding it to each other, that's when it's like, hey, we're still in a pandemic. Come on.
Yeah. So it does kind of feel like it's kind of ended for most folks in that sense, because people were just having the shared appetizers off of a plate and not wearing masks and drinking. And so I've seen that it's already like, I think we're now at a point where we're beyond being able to, Pandora's box is open now. Like we'll never have lockdowns again, as we know. It doesn't work well economically, and Democrats don't want to do that while they have the power. But also I think it's going to be a lot more difficult, because if you're saying you're vaccinated to get into an establishment, most folks are going to feel more comfortable now. They're like, great, everyone else around me is supposedly vaccinated. So even if it's around, the likelihood of getting it is going to be less likely. And if you do get it, it's going to be less severe. So I think a lot of folks are just ready to be like, okay, let's move on. And you can see that by just the amount of activity, the busyness of everything. So that's my only thing, is like, I just feel that there is some fatigue, even out here in liberal California, with these mask mandates, because again, it's like, okay, you're saying you need to be vaccinated to go somewhere. So where is that end result? And it always changes. Like even a month or so ago, they were talking about potentially ending the mask mandate indoors for vaccinated, in February. I don't know if that's still going to be the case, because I know this goes till January 15th. So maybe, but there's just, I think there is even a level of fatigue out here as well.
Yeah, I guess I forget that there are so many people who are not, that the pandemic is not at the front of their conscious as it is to me and a lot of people that surround me, where if I were at an event where hors d'oeuvres were being passed around, I would absolutely be like, oh my God, I can't believe. But I forget that there's a lot of people who, even in the world that we're currently living in, they wouldn't think like, oh, I shouldn't do this, because and the reason what that brought to mind for me is that I'm working at an interim housing site now. It's a family site, so I'm around a lot of children, and so I've been sick every other week. I've gotten like a really bad cold, and last week.
By the way, you might be surprised, but I can relate to that.
Yes, I imagine you could, Christian.
Yeah.
And so last week, and at each time I get a COVID test, it's always negative. I just have this horrible cold. And if I'm out someplace, like I went to a nail salon because I had to. Anyway, I was at a nail salon while I was sick. I had my mask on, but I just had this coughing fit. I had a coughing fit that I could not, and I was just looking around and I was like apologizing with my eyes, and I was just like, oh, they're going to kick me out of here. They're all probably terrified. And nobody was fazed in any way. Like nobody seemed bothered by the fact that I could not stop coughing. And I was just like, it's as if, I don't know, like it's just not at the forefront of some people's concern. And I forget that it's like that for some people.
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple things. That you have people that it is not in the forefront. You do have what Scott's alluding to, is just the fatigue and just like, you know what, I've done enough. But there is also the feeling that, depends on what your home situation is. For most of us, myself included, is I'm now triple vaccinated. So if I were to get this, I'm not going to be so sick. I would be worried about bringing it home to really my daughter is she's 4. So my son is halfway there. He's already gotten one shot and he's going to get another one right after Christmas. So happy Boxing Day, Felix. Here's a needle in your arm, which he did not enjoy the first time, by the way. Go figure. But anyway, so yeah, I think that there's a lot of that sort of like, if I get it, I'm going to be okay, and The for the hors d'oeuvres thing, I actually have the perfect solution for that, and this is what I do at an event. I wait for wherever the servers are coming out of the kitchen, and I just immediately grab the plate from them and eat everything on it, so that I don't have to share a plate with anyone. Problem solved. I'm like,
Nice.
yes, I will have 8 sliders. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, they tell me that I'm not supposed to tip you, so I'm just going to take this plate. Thanks. But in any case, yeah, I think that and I don't know. I think that last month, and Scott, I know you had been to Vegas. I talked about how I went to Vegas, but Tamara wasn't here. Vegas was definitely a bit of a wake up call in the sense that you walk in, it's like you gotta wear a mask, but as soon as you get past that person, everybody's smoking, drinking, eating, sometimes all three, sometimes all three in the same hole in their neck. They're doing everything, and then
Yeah.
it's like, I went to an indoor concert. I went and saw the Rolling Stones in a huge stadium there, and it has a roof. So it was just like there were masks. People would wear them, when they were walking around, but not in the spot where they're sitting with like 50,000 people. That's not when they had it on. They had it on like to walk
Well, it's
in.
not like you can kill Keith Richards.
Well, clearly, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I think that we're not worried about that. So it's just interesting. It was an interesting place to go, and I don't know. I hear that in New York's going to have an indoor mask mandate, so I'll feel right at home when I'm there in January. But you're hearing about places doing it. It doesn't seem to be such a big deal. But I'm sure that there are people who have a lot of reasons that they disagree. But it's like getting tested, getting a booster shot, wearing a mask. These are the alternatives to the we don't want the lockdowns anymore. Well, we're not going to get them, we're told. But here's the things we are going to get. So it's like you cannot like this, but isn't it better to wear a mask at the gym than to have the gym closed, I guess. And I think that it's interesting because I think that even with me, and we've talked about it, like when it comes to like hearing like, oh my god, there's this Omicron variant, I'm like, okay, I'm the same level of worried as I was before, which wasn't zero. I'm not extra worried about the spread of this because I've done everything that I can. I don't know, Tamara, do you hearing that there's another variant that might spread quicker, does it change the way you feel about it, or do you feel about the same? Because you were already fairly vigilant from what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think I'm behaving the same. I mean, unless they say that unless there's evidence that the vaccine is not holding up to this variant, and people are getting like severely sick. Vaccinated people are getting severely sick. I suppose like if that, knock on wood, should happen, then maybe I could see people adjusting their behavior a little bit. But yeah, I think people have pretty much settled into the. I think the way people are now is the way that this is just going to be how we are now. Like I don't see
Mhm.
us going back to a life where we're not wearing masks in certain places, or at least some people. It'll be a lot more like Asian countries were before pandemic, where in crowded places a lot of people were just wearing masks. Like that'll just be how it is now. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna fly for the first time in like I don't know 3 years probably, and I'm like more comfortable knowing that everyone has to wear a mask. Like that's not going to change, So I'd get over it, I guess. If I was going to fly, I could still wear one, but the idea that you're supposed to, I don't
and
know.
and
Go
I
ahead.
also I also think like mask wearing is still so new to us. There's so much judgment. There was so much judgment in the beginning over who's somebody's being too careful or somebody's not being careful enough. I also think that sort of judgment on the other person is on other people is going to ease up a little bit as this becomes more part of just normal life, because there are There's so many things where you just never know the reason somebody's doing what they're doing. Like I've been on a Zoom call in the evening for like a neighborhood council meeting, and I'm wearing a mask in the Zoom call because I'm at work while everybody else is at home, and I'm thinking like they're thinking like, God, this chick's paranoid. Look at her wearing a mask in a Zoom meeting, and like they don't realize that I have to because I'm at work. But things like that. But I think it's things like that where people are. I'm hoping that sort of judgment on the behavior of other people is going to kind of ease a little bit as we're still in this learning curve area of mask wearing, and as it just becomes a normal part of life, I feel like I'm hoping that'll ease a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sort of to take it back to what I was saying earlier, when I do run into families who they and their kids have masks on, I don't think anything of it in a negative sense. I'm just more of like, oh, are they like wondering, like, are they judging me because I'm at a park and my kids will usually have them on when we show up. It just doesn't last, but they're really good about wearing them because they wear them in school. They're better about it than I am, in all
I've
honesty.
noticed I've noticed kids are fine with masks,
Yeah.
the ones that I've seen.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, Scott, what do you think? We'll move on before I know, Tamara, you've only got a few more minutes, so we'll talk about one more thing before we go. But do you feel like mask wearing is something that 2 years from now we'll probably still be doing in a lot of settings?
Yeah, I kind of do agree with Tamara on this, in that maybe it is going to be more like what's been going on in Asia for years, and people that are not feeling well, and just in general, colds and other things will now be more likely to put on a mask. But on the other hand, there's just going to be a portion of the country that will never buy into that, regardless. And we have to start looking into this being like an endemic type situation where it's never going to go away, and now we just have to manage it. And that's why people are going out to live their lives. And there's always an inherent risk when you go anywhere every day, regardless if it's getting sick, whether it's getting injured, whatever the case may be, when you are going about your day-to-day life. And so it's just being able to balance that with that risk. And obviously, if you have more risk that could get you to be more sick if you were to get this disease, then you will have to take stronger measures. If you're someone that's relatively healthy or in the younger end and you're triple vaccinated or whatever, then you should feel comfortable enough to go out and continue to live your life by taking some everyday precautions, but not having to feel like you can't go out and do anything at all. And so, yeah, I think where we're at right now is where we're going to end up, where even out here, like I said, in California, a very liberal area, LA and everything, people are ready to get back out and live their lives and to some degree. And so that's going to be the balance of treating this more like an endemic instead of a pandemic, like we would the flu, and continue to take cautionary measures where appropriate, but that people can go out and do things they fully need to do. Because again, masks are great, but it's also kind of, people are not wearing them correctly all the time. Again, the eating and drinking and being in a bar and everything else. Like I have a holiday party I'm going to on Thursday, and I can almost guarantee you that once people come in, they're not going to be wearing their mask because they're going to have a plate of food. They're going to have their drink. The mask is going to be down when they're talking to people. There's just no easy way of doing it. So we just have to be able to balance that out, and knowing that if like we're taking the measures of saying you need to be vaccinated to come to an indoor space, great. So that's where we have to kind of strike that balance and move forward, and know that this will never be fully eliminated, between not just people refusing to get vaccinated here in this country, but also being able to get the vaccines to the appropriate places around the world, which should also be the US and other wealthy nations' focus as well in 2022, to start making sure that a lot of these vaccines get to the right arms around the world that need it to help some of the poorer countries be able to get this under control as well. So the variants can stop, popping up regularly, and maybe it's a little bit more spread out, and they come but once a year, and we can go back into having it once a year, like a flu shot, kind of thing, where it can be manageable too.
No, exactly. I think that just sort of dealing with it is the way to go forward. Some countries we've talked about are getting more lockdown happy, but I think Democrats already know they've got a tough road ahead of them, so they don't want to make it worse politically. So, Tamara, we'll let you go in a moment. Wanted to spend our final couple minutes here on the show talking about Times Person of the Year, Elon Musk. I think a lot of people disagree with that. I think that you can make a case for why he is an important, noteworthy figure. The value of Dogecoin goes up just because he says that Tesla's going to take it. And I know that I didn't mention that I was going to ask the question in this way, but Tamara, this doesn't even have to be the person who would be the best person of the year. If you could think of an alternate, just sort of, it can be off the top of your head. Who do you think would be a more fitting person of the year than Elon Musk? And Scott has more time to think about it because you need to go first.
Harry Styles.
I mean, that's a great. I mean, come on. Wait, am I going to say no to Harry Styles?
Yeah, it's purely a publicity stunt.
Sure, of course
it was
is.
just
Yeah.
getting people talking. They needed somebody who was somewhat controversial in order to talk about it. Ugh, I personally cannot stand Elon Musk. I don't know. He was Tech Bros, maybe a fan of his or whatever, who actually would be like, yes, that's a great nomination.
Yeah.
But yeah, I who would be a good person of the year? I mean,
every year I vote for Alex Jones, but nobody listens to me.
God. That he doesn't qualify as a person.
Well, that's because the lizard people have replaced Alex Jones years ago, and he's being impersonated. But that's not his fault. Anyway. But yeah, Harry Styles, I think that I'll tell you this, they'd sell a lot more magazines, and that's really the business that they should be in. You think that how many magazines are you going to sell putting Elon Musk on the cover? You put Harry Styles on the cover, and that's really all it takes. Well, Tamara, we know you need to go. Thank you for joining us this week, and we look forward to catching up with you in the new year. Until then, if people want to keep in touch with you, how do they do that?
You can follow me on social media at Hey Tamra. I'm currently in TikTok jail, but I'm going to try to get out of it. So,
oh my gosh, TikTok jail!
Ooh.
Do you have time to tell us how that happened?
I posted a silly video, parody video, and it violated some what do they call it, like community guidelines or something. So they took it down, and then so after that, like your next few videos only get just they get way less views. But I gotta keep. My problem is I've been too busy. I just haven't been posting that often, so I gotta get
it back up there.
Gotta get it back out there.
All right. Well, so now you have something in common with Roger Stone. You've both been to jail. All right. Thank you, Tamara, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy everything, and we'll see you in 2022.
Good to see you guys.
All right. So, Scott, Elon Musk, Person of the Year. Who do you think would be a better suggestion for? And if you want to think about it from the earnest, like who's a better Person of the Year, or if you want to think about it in the cynical way of who would be better from a celebrity magazine sales standpoint, you could go that way. You could go either way you want.
Yeah, I could go. I mean, look, I would go the earnest way in the sense of just the first responders. I know it's not sexy in the sense of like celebrities and controversy, but I feel, again, it was short-sighted from last year, and I cannot even imagine the absolute exhaustion. Like whenever I complain about the crap I have to do with my job and the business I have, a lot of that business is thrown on myself. It's like to imagine the level of exhaustion of dealing with everything they've dealt with in the past nearly 2 years. And it's just mind-boggling. And between that and science and being able to come up with these vaccines, granted, you could be cynical and say, okay, pharmaceutical companies are just out for money. That's why they're encouraging getting the boosters, and you can still see that there's breakthrough cases, and you could go the cynical route. But the fact that collaboratively the worldwide scientists got together and put this vaccine together in record time, which I know scares a lot of people, built on technology that's been around for well over 15 years. Besides the point, the fact that they came together to come with a common cause and solved a major worldwide problem that if it weren't for these vaccines, I cannot even imagine where we'd be as a worldwide, humanity, of where we'd be with those numbers. So between those people that to me deserve all the recognition because they're just in it day in and day out, with, they're just not known, nameless, but they are working so hard and they're making such huge differences in what's going on in the world, and being able to move forward is, to me, just incredible. And the fact of just the pure exhaustion, I don't know. I just don't know how they do it. I really don't,
Yeah,
day in and day out, with the lack of rest and constantly moving forward and being there, putting their own lives at risk still, with potentially getting breakthrough cases and whatnot, that they're putting themselves at, then they were putting themselves at risk. And I believe that they should have all that acknowledgement that comes with it, and then some, as opposed to, Elon Musk, who, again, he's made some strides in making things good for some people. Again, that's why he's a billionaire. He made a product that down the line is going to be very important for controlling global warming, and just new technologies for working with vehicles and other things that don't have to be gas powered. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many other people that deserve it more at this point in time than he does.
Yeah, I mean, you could have just as easily as given it to Billie Eilish. It would have been
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, I mean, I think that as a figure, and obviously as in terms of his single-handed the impact he has on the economy, he is an important figure, and I think that I can see him being on a list like that. But yeah, when you actually give it to anybody, I mean, you could have anybody in terms of I'd even like, even if they gave it to like they shared it between the Pfizer and Moderna CEO, I'd be like, yeah, okay. You could do something like that. Although, man, that every time that Moderna CEO opens his mouth, I'm like, could you shut up? Like the Pfizer CEO tries to make us feel like everything's going to be okay. That Moderna guy, he was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you might be able to get Delta combined with Omicron, and that's going to be a real problem. I'm like, dude,
Right.
calm down. We're trying to feel better. But anyway,
Well, yeah. I
sorry.
mean, I was just gonna say, I would take it off of the CEOs and even just say the scientists, because to me it's like, okay, great, they're running the
Yeah,
companies,
no,
but
no,
they're
no,
not really,
absolutely. The
they're not doing
scientists,
anything.
yeah, yeah, they
They're
just
just making
probably,
record profits.
as
That's
you
all
say,
they're
they just
doing.
have bonuses, really.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
rolling in. I
exactly.
can't even imagine what kind of bonuses they're getting this year
Well,
for all
it's
the billions of profits these farms. And that's where you can get cynical by saying, okay, but it's
yeah,
the scientists that were behind this that helped move
yeah,
this forward, and the first responders, because again, we've had another long year and we've had more deaths this year than last year from COVID. It just goes to show that they're still in the fight, and especially in other parts of the world right now where it's still pretty grim, and
yeah. But I
yeah, I
mean, it's
mean,
even parts of the country you'll hear about,
right.
just places
Hmm.
where hospitals are overwhelmed, and it isn't even necessarily, it's not like 0% of people are vaccinated in some of those communities. Vaccinated is the word I wanted to use.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
as someone who grew up in a fairly rural area, I grew up outside of New York City, but it's right where the suburbs started to get rural. Like the hospital that was like about 30 minutes away from where my house was. It served a much larger area, and there was other hospitals, sure, but you're sort of like, and I know, just even places in California, you'll have one hospital that handles like a 60 or even more mile radius. So it's very easy for our healthcare system to get overwhelmed. So yeah, anybody that I know who works in that field in any way, I mean, I can't imagine, what it's like to have this still be a problem. And yes, if somebody comes in and they're vaccinated and it's minor, you're like, okay, this is at least better. But the amount of people that you've had to have come in and they die, you feel like it's preventable, it's
Hmm.
yeah, I can't imagine. But yeah, yeah. So my point about the CEOs with that is that they were more deserving than Elon Musk.
Oh,
That's
sure.
really what
Yeah.
I was getting at. Yeah.
There's a place
But
for Elon Musk. There's a time and place for him for sure, that you
yeah,
could
no, no,
say
like
that has
I'm not
made a
saying he
difference
shouldn't be in the
and will be,
conversation. Yeah.
but not
And
these years right now.
yeah, and like the year that Trump won, it was like, you want to talk about, it's like he really dominated our collective like consciousness that year. I mean, I understand what they mean by the award. It doesn't always mean man of the year is your person of the year is the best person on the planet. It doesn't mean that. It means like, noteworthy, newsworthy, etc. But I like to think that we were the people of the year. And Tamra's not here, so I don't have to lump her in with us. Oh, it's all right. I'll lump her in. The three of us, we could have had they could have just done a screenshot of our Zoom screen. But it's always interesting. It's not always fun, but it's fun to get to talk about all the stuff that's out there in the news. And Scott, we always appreciate you making time in your very busy schedule. And we hope that everybody who watches live and watches the archive version enjoys the conversation, and that they come back for more Biden time when it is Biden time in January. But if people want to keep in touch with you, and maybe over the holidays, you'll have some time to see how Mitch McConnell's doing. You can tweet at him about not voting for the debt ceiling.
That's right. You can follow me on Twitter at sman80. That's right there at the bottom left of your screen. And hopefully I will have some time over the holidays to get back to it.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what the holidays are about.
That's right.
Rage tweeting a creepy.
That's right. Rage tweeting will be. Yes, I know a lot of people actually miss that. I hear that from people all the time that love that I called out so many people, which I never knew. I never knew that was a thing. I just thought it was just me putting things out there where people actually really liked it and were very like, oh, love that you're giving it to them. I'm like, yeah, like they're ever going to see it, but they liked it.
That's not the point. Yeah,
that's not the point. They liked it, so that's all that matters. My fans loved it.
Yeah, that's really, it's for the fans. And thank Tamra, thank everybody who's been a guest on the show this year. Thanks everybody who watches. We will see you next year. Please subscribe to the Blattcast YouTube channel, BLADTCAST. You'll always know when this show is bringing you a new episode. And we have our other shows, Marvel Movie Talk. We'll be talking about the Hawkeye series on Disney+. And at the end of the week, when we can finally start talking about spoilers, I will tell everybody what I thought of the new Spider-Man movie. But for now, just try to not have it ruined for you. Just try to go see it on Thursday before Twitter ruins everything. So happy New Year, everybody, and we'll see you in 2022. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you in the new year.